Okay, 1 Corinthians 15, skipping down to verse 35. But some man will say, how are the dead raised up, and with what body do they come? Thou fool, that which thou sowest is not quickened except it die, and that which thou sowest not that body that shall be, but bear grain, it may chance of wheat or of some other grain. But God giveth it a body as it hath pleased him, and to every seed his own body. Okay, so I think the some man in verse 35 um, is referring to somebody like a Sadducee. They don't believe in the resurrection. They're saying, how are the dead raised up? Um, I don't think that means that um, they're asking the wrong question or what have you. But they're kind of reiterating their main point rhetorically, uh, but by asking a rhetorical question by saying, but even though you just said all that stuff, the dead really aren't raised, are they? Um, I think that's the way to take that. But we see that the body of a dead person is like a seed, and the at the time of the resurrection is going to be different. A tree is not exactly like the seed, but it comes from the seed. It comes out of the seed, so it's there. Um, it's the same like seed type thing, only changed. So the same but different. Alright, so it says, God giveth it a body as it hath pleased him, and to every seed his own body. So different seeds, different trees, or different resurrected bodies. Verse 39, all flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts, another of fishes, and another of birds. Now, notice in verse 39, we're talking about physical, material, biologically living entities. Fish, birds are all biologically living physical body entities. But they're not exactly the same. A fish and a bird are different kinds of animals. Verse 40, then it says, there are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial. But the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another. There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars, for one star differeth from another star in glory. So not all stars are exactly the same. Perhaps some advanced scientific knowledge there. And when it speaks of the sun and the stars, I think that was before we started speaking of the sun as a star, because it is chemically or the constituents and how it acts and so on is just another star, but it is particularly significant to Earth compared to the more distant stars. So it does make sense to speak of the sun as being not like all the other stars. So it's not a scientific error. Paul's not saying the sun is not a star. It's different from the other stars in the sense that it's closer to us and more important to us on Earth. All right. So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown in corruption, it is raised in incorruption. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body and there is a spiritual body. So it is written, the first Adam was made a living soul, the last Adam was made a quickening spirit. Howbeit that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterward that which is spiritual. The first man is of the earth, earthy, the second man is the Lord from heaven. As is the earthy, such are they also that are earthy, and as is the heavenly, such are they also that are heavenly. And as we have borne the image of the earthy, we shall also bear the image of the heavenly. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, neither doth corruption inherit incorruption. Okay, so that takes us up through verse 50, 50. Now it speaks of the spiritual body in there, and what some have said is that it's not a physical body, it's a spiritual body. So Jesus didn't physically rise from the dead. Well, I think um, the thing we have to keep in mind about a spiritual body is that it is a body, and a body is a physical entity. Says there is a spiritual body and there is a natural body. Now, when Jesus in the Gospels, um, it doesn't say in the Gospels explicitly that the resurrected body of Jesus was exactly like his body, like right at the crucifixion. It doesn't explicitly deny it doesn't explicitly say the resurrected body of Jesus is exactly like his living body. And in fact, there's an implication that it is in fact different. For example, when Jesus is on the road to Emmaus, or I'm sorry, when these people are on the road to Emmaus, disciples of Jesus, he appears to them after the resurrection and says, why you're down in the mouth, and so on. And they say, we can't believe that you're asking that you haven't heard. But the Messiah, or who we thought was the Messiah, he was killed, and you must be the only one who's ever heard about this. And then uh, in the account, in the pericope, the people on the road to Emmaus, the disciples, don't recognize that it's Jesus at first. Later on, it's revealed to them. So it seems there's something different about his body from that passage, and there's other similar passages. And then there's also the passage, I believe in John, well, towards the end of John, when John's Gospel, when the disciples are in the upper room, the doors are closed. I think they're even locked. So there's really no way for a body to walk into the room without opening the door first. But yet Jesus kind of appears in there. Well, a four-dimensional body would be able to go through a three-dimensional wall or into a three-dimensional closed room by accessing this fourth dimension. So perhaps the body of Jesus after he rose again has extra dimensionality to it than previously. But the main idea is that there are things that are going on with the body of Jesus that don't seem to make much sense unless we assume that it was different in some way. Um, so what Paul is saying here about the resurrection body, it's still physical, but it's not exactly like the physical body that you have when you're dying. What Paul is saying about that is right in line with what we find implicitly in the Gospels. And the claim that we're addressing is that Paul didn't believe in the resurrection like in the Gospels. So flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, it says. Well, the natural body, the spiritual body is still a physical body, but the natural body cannot inherit the kingdom of God. Now, notice it says in verse 50, at the end of verse 50, neither does corruption inherit incorruption. But then, in verse 52, which we haven't read yet, it says that the dead shall be raised incorruptible. Verse 53, the corruptible must put on incorruption, which is said just a few verses before that can't happen. So we have to read this chapter in context. We can't just take one verse and isolate it from the other verses, or else we'll be taking it out of context and misunderstanding it. So apparently it means something else in verse 50. Now a lot of people like to look and try to find contradictions in the Bible, but to find one within like a 3-verse stretch written by the same man it does seem a bit far-fetched. I mean, if this means what the physical resurrection deniers want it to mean, that there's a blatant contradiction from like one verse to the next. So it seems that it's talking about something else here. And what I would say is the spiritual body. It's spiritual in the sense of uh, being more in tune with God, being more spiritual in that sense. A person with a physical body who is spiritually connected to God. Um, and also, it's different from the original seed, the natural body as a seed. God has supernaturally changed it, so it's been changed. In that sense, it's spiritual, but it's still a physical, material body made up of atoms and electrons and so on. Um, so we're up through verse 50 of chapter 15, um, and we'll have to pick it up in another video to finish off the chapter. Thank you, Michelle.